Hey everybody, this is the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carbajal, Matt Hawkins here with you as always. Brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Make sure you check out AllAccessMMA.com for your mixed martial arts news. Um, we got a lot to talk about, Matt, because UFC 279 came and went. It was the last fight on Nate Diaz's contract, and it was supposed to be Khamzat Chimaev and Nate Diaz, and what was predicted to be a kind of a lopsided matchup. And then within 24 hours of them facing off, the entire card got rearranged, and everybody seems all right with it. Like nobody's. Well, there are people calling shenanigans, but apparently that's all right in Nevada. I mean, I guess we know why the UFC's home base is in Nevada now.
Yeah, this topic is obviously got a lot of ways that can be where it can go. Um, I see a lot of people I respect online trying to shut down all the conspiracy theorists, and you know, I know we sit here and we kind of talk about some of the nonsense that goes on with the UFC, but I feel like we reached an all-time level this past weekend, and I don't know if it's conspiracy theory just to ask questions, which is what generally gets you shut down these days,
Mm-hmm.
um, by just simply trying to figure out how things that have never happened in the past and how things, you know, we're gonna get into it. So I can't even. It's like mind-boggling how things went off. But from what we know, early on Friday morning, the day of weigh-ins, Chimaev was, 7 to 10 pounds overweight, somewhere in that range, early in the morning. Um, and we've heard conflicting reports whether a doctor told him to stop or whether he just quit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually, I'm jumping the gun because we had
The press
the
conference
press
bullshit
conference was
happened.
was that was on Thursday, was the press
Yeah,
conference.
Thursday. The Thursday before was supposed to be the pre-fight press conference, and allegedly something crazy happened that involved over 100 people, and there wasn't enough security. The footage that we saw that the UFC released on it, I mean, which of course wasn't, for some reason, if there's 100 people there, not for nothing, a street fight happens in anywhere USA, that's on hood fights literally within 24 hours or sooner, and all over social media. But for some reason, nobody has footage of this outside of the UFC, and they're embedded. Um, and then there's stuff after it, but as far as whatever happened backstage, what we saw didn't look like much, but apparently it warranted canceling the press conference. Um, you know, and then now last night, I know I messaged you about it, but let me bring that up first, or I'll read it off. The commission's supposed to be investigating it as of September 12th. Apparently they heard about it and they're looking into it. And I'm just summarizing what I'm going to be shouting out our boy Eric McGracken of Combat Sports Law, that's been on this podcast a couple times before, because a lot of this, when it comes to missing weight and finding a way to make cards happen, Mr. McGracken likes to go down these very interesting rabbit holes to find the shenanigans that go on these things. So if you haven't checked it out, I'm going to bring it up. The he usually um he he makes a blog out of his findings, and we're going to share that in about a minute. But the commission says a commission will strictly discipline all licensees for all incidents of physical violence between athletes outside the ring or cage, up to and including purse forfeiture, revocation of suspension, current license denial of applicants for new applicants, and any future license renewals if they find out that anything went wrong at the press conference that would cause them to do anything like that. Matt, you said when I told you about this is probably the first and last thing we'll hear. We'll probably never hear about it again.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't think we will. As you say, the fact that all these fighters who are social media savvy left and right,
Mm-hmm.
nobody had a live Instagram, nobody had a live Facebook, nobody had any video going or anything like that, while a brawl broke out between multiple high level world champion level MMA fighters. We have no reports of any injuries. We have no reports of any bruises, cuts, nobody limping, nothing. Apparently, people were drop kicking each other. people were throwing stuff at each other. No damage, no photos of somebody covered in water after being hit with a water
Mhm.
bottle. Nothing like that. Um,
And it didn't
but
look like that many people in the footage that we did see. It didn't look like there was, you know, hundred close to 100 people back there. The way I mean, I know these entourages for these fighters are pretty deep. I know for a fact that Nate Diaz had his Real Fight Inc. bus, and fighter that of his that I talked to, Jose Aguayo, was with him, along with the guys that he trained with from NDA that were there just to support him. But I mean, I don't think it was 100 people
no,
or
I don't
50
care.
or
It could
whatever.
have been six people. Let's just
Mhm.
say it was the three or four main card fighters and two cornermen.
I
If
think
the
we've seen worse at Connor things. Now, never
that's
mind the Brooklyn stuff, but like the other stuff when Diaz and them with that seemed worse when Diaz
yeah,
and them
that's
were
what I
throwing
mean.
bottles that everybody saw and had footage of.
There's 4K video of Conor McGregor randomly showing up with a dolly and throwing it through a bus, but not that
Mhm.
but nothing on this. And let's throw the video. Let's just say that for some reason in Vegas, we've seen in the past with horrific incidents where all of a sudden cameras don't work, but somehow in Vegas we don't have any camera footage of this going down. Um, no injuries. I and then the commission usually is the first to jump on this. So even if you're not going to try to blow the card up and blow the UFC up over the weekend for this, there's no cornerman suspensions. There's no that's what gets me the most. Like
Mhm.
there's no punishment, and then the review is happening like 3 days after the event, according to the commission. Like, wow, that's weird because usually you would review something that was so catastrophic that you had to cancel a press conference that people attended. Um, Dana White's response to that on Thursday night was odd. The fact that there was no information, and as you said, we've seen fighters literally get in brawls. We've seen people punch each other on the stage, um, and that not be enough to cancel anything. Um, it's just bizarre as all
Well,
hell.
here, I
So
mean, they're not going to cancel. I mean, at this point, we should know with the UFC's deal with ESPN, they ain't canceling shit. I mean, like they tried to move forward when everything was stopped during the pandemic because they have that deal that they have to put on a certain event. If they don't put on the contracted amount of events that they promised ESPN, they don't get their money. So they ain't canceling anything ever.
I get the
Um,
UFC not canceling ever, but in theory, and
hmm,
well, obviously this goes to where being in their own backyard, which you brought up several times over the weekend. Um, you think the commission somebody would step in and somebody would
yeah.
say, wait
Well,
a minute, like
but here's
wait
the
a minute.
thing. Yeah, I mean, look, we might let's bring that up. So Eric McGracken, who's been on this podcast a couple of times, the last time I had to talk to him. The reason why we couldn't bring him on now is because again, it's kind of short notice for him, time difference. Usually, I have to be off during the day to get him. Both times that I've talked to him for the podcast, he's been on. So shout out to Eric McGracken and the hard work that he does when he gets sucked into. It literally derailed his day when he was going back and forth with me on Twitter about it. But I'm bringing up his blog here. I mean, he calls it "Let's Talk Diaz comes out and the legal mess in Nevada." Um, he starts off where he talks about the opening of the press conference. And for folks just listening to this, I'm going to drop the link to the article for you to read it too on the audio description when you listen to it. But he cites the everything that happened with the press conference. Um, but then he always goes into the regulations where Nevada has they have a lot of rules apparently for no reason. So he drills through the issues. So a fighter can't cut more than 2 pounds after missing weight in Nevada, which he was already 7.5 or whatever it was, and then here he is trying to cut triple that. So he puts up the weigh-in of an unarmed. This is from the Athletic Commission on the Combat Sports Law blog that Eric tracked this whole thing down. After the weigh-in of an unarmed combatant competing in a contest or exhibition of mixed martial arts, weight loss in excess of 2 pounds is not permitted. Weight loss described in subsection 2, which is what I just read, must not occur later than 1 hour after the initial weigh-in. Okay, and then it says that the rules spreads there's spreads that are allowed if weight is missed, and the, usually the wider it is, the harder it is to do. So he goes and he lists. You have to check out the article because he lists all these regulations, And then by the time he gets to through all of his findings, and I'm scrolling down because I know Matt appreciates this image where where it's like
UFC 2 poster.
there where it said where the he and I think he tagged Campbell McLaren because that was his tagline. Where about the UFC initial, there the whole thing about there were rules was that there are no rules because at the end of the whole thing, Nevada has a rule that says they can waive their rules. The promoter can waive the rules. So all
Yeah,
these
no,
rules in place just for them to do whatever the fuck they want anyway. And I never knew this before, but I mean, you would think history would have kind of pointed us in this direction. It took this weight cutting mishap for McGracken to bring it out in the open for us, but now we know why the UFC's home base is in Nevada.
yeah. So okay. So obviously, I don't need to go through the whole ins and outs because anybody listening to this podcast probably is semi aware of who ended up fighting who. So
Mm-hmm.
as we know, the card then, as a result of Chimaev not being able to make weight, they did a giant shuffle to the card.
Mm-hmm.
Diaz, who was a huge 10-1 underdog, suddenly becomes a favorite against Tony Ferguson. Crowds rejoice, fans are happy. Uh, Life is suddenly good again. Chimaev, who weighed in right under 180, conveniently slides into the catchweight bout that the
Mm-hmm.
UFC happened to make with Holland and
Which they used to
Rodriguez.
never do. Like they used to be
No, no.
yeah.
Remember how Bellator was the only,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And they catch heat for doing that, but no.
yeah, they were bush league
Yeah.
because they have catchwit. So, but we have multiple ones on this card. So that just conveniently worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but here's what gets me and why MMA media in general is a bunch of shitheads. Okay. This goes to every single person who is credentialed to be able to ask Dana White questions. When Dana White stands up on the podium and tells you the commission would not allow Chimaev to fight Diaz because there was such a giant weight
Mm-hmm.
discrepancy. And you don't immediately ask him why it was okay for Jingliang to fight Chimaev or to fight Rodriguez with the exact same weight difference. So suddenly it's not okay for this, but nobody asks him that. Nobody goes, well, wait a minute. If it was against the commission's rules for that bout, then why was it okay for it to happen 2 fights earlier on the
Well,
card?
nobody asked. I mean, and I even said it a couple times on social media when it was like he mentions the physician telling him to stop. If it was that bad that a physician had to step in, which again, if you listen to his coach, he says there were no physicians there. If you listen to Dana White and the beautiful piece that Brett Okamoto conveniently put out this morning, they mentioned physicians in it. So if a doctor says it's dangerous and he's locking up and cramping up, why was he suddenly okay? It was perfectly fine for him to still be on the card and fight Kevin Holland, and never mind the fact that he didn't look like he was suffering from any weight cutting or anything like that. He had plenty of energy to take down Kevin Holland and keep his undefeated streak alive. So a
He
lot of
should have
I
had
mean,
energy that he didn't have to cut weight. Getting to this puff
but
piece that
if you go
Okamoto puts
if you're
out.
dying trying to cut weight, I mean,
You,
not for nothing. I don't think that's something you recover that great from
no, no,
to
no.
fight and perform like that.
You're probably not laughing on the scale as you're weighing in.
And
So
sticking your middle finger at people.
this puff piece by Okamoto that came out to stroke off the UFC. Let's just real quick. His facts are at 4 a.m. in the morning. Chimaev body was locking up, and he had 5 pound left to cut. His body was seizing up. He was vomiting and cramping, and then a doctor showed up and called off the weight cut. If it's at 4 a.m., I'm guessing 5 a.m. in the morning they cut, at the latest they cut it off. He didn't wait. He didn't hit the scales till close to 11 a.m. Vegas time, I think is the deadline. It's not like he hit the scales early on. He came on fairly late in the weigh-in show and missed weight by that much. So you're looking at about a 4 or 5 hour period where he rehydrated, putting on a whole 2 pounds, according to not even that, putting on like a pound and a half, according to his coach and the whole situation here. So I don't believe any of it for a second. I don't. And you call me crazy, call me a conspiracy, call me Pat Militech, call me Schaub, whatever these guys are saying. There was shenanigans being ran big time behind this. Dana White talks about a sellout. As of 2 weeks ago, there was a ton of tickets available. I don't know how many are comped. I don't know how that works out. Sure, the tickets were lower. It was primarily sold out. A sellout is never
Mm.
100%, but there was probably 500 seats available as the show started.
And he
As I
said at the post-fight press conference, he said that during that 24-hour period between Thursday and Friday, when everything was happening and things were uncertain, he also said that day that they still sold 250 tickets. So I mean, not for nothing. Only reason I believe that is because we talk about the modern UFC fan and how they are these days. Like I 100% believe. I mean that they would do that just because they're so it's almost like a zombie now, the UFC, the modern UFC fan. And I mean there's people traveling to spend these $600 on these tickets in Madison Square Garden in November. When I mean I think when what was it, 230. I remember to blood nosebleeds being or
about
I'm sorry.
125, 140,
Yeah,
something like
whatever
that.
the card that Cormier was on,
Yeah, it was 2:30, November 3rd.
yeah,
That was my birthday. That was when I was out there. I got
yeah,
tickets for you and your buddy to sit up
yeah.
top, and
They're
and
like
I think
triple the cost.
yeah, easily triple the cost. Better card than that 230 card, admittedly, but
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 yeah.
but not triple the cost. Yeah, the prices have spiked. That was also put out on Twitter how they're making record profits on their ticket sales.
Mhm.
Listen, it's Las Vegas. It's on the strip. There's arena on the strip in Las Vegas. You're going to sell out almost any UFC event you put out there. I mean, they're selling out fight nights in San Diego. You're selling out fight nights in Ohio. You're going to sell out a pay-per-view event in Las Vegas, even if it's two of the biggest bozos who have ever entered
Yeah.
the cage headlining it. The bottom line is, I cannot see. I think there would have been damage done to the promotion, to the matchmaker, to everything if they had gone through with Chimaev Diaz, and we would have saw a main event that ended in 55 seconds. The main event would have looked just like Holland and Chimaev.
Mm.
It would have been an exact replay of it. Fans would have lost their shit, going, "Wow, we just paid." We came here to watch Diaz, and the UFC matched him up with somebody who wasn't even going to allow him to throw a single strike.
Mm.
I don't think that flies. I think eventually people would have revolted at
But
some
I
point.
mean, why book it? Why announce it and hype it up and book it? Just because I mean, not for nothing. Nate Diaz made a lot of points in his interviews and everything with it, where he seemed frustrated, and then you give him a fight like not for nothing. I didn't mind that when they put him against Ferguson. I was like, you know what? Not only do I like that better, I think that's a great matchup. I mean, it's two guys. It's. I mean, as far as like the skill level and looking for a competitive fight and stuff like I loved it. I love the
I
outcome
talked
of
about it
it.
on the podcast that week.
Yeah,
I said that that's the fight that should have been made, and I was
yeah.
actually disappointed that it wasn't. It was clear cut to be the fight to be made. It's also conspiracy that Ferguson was just added to the whole card, 2 weeks prior, 3 weeks prior, something like that. So it was like a late ad to get him onto the card. Listen, I don't know. All I know is that they clearly initially made the matchup to destroy Nate Diaz's reputation and try to damage him as a fighter. Maybe this all just happened to fall into a place where it made him look great and it worked out great for him. The MMA gods finally did something right for the fighters and allowed this chaos to ensue. But I think it was vindictive by the UFC to make the match. We said that last week on the show, and I think that it just either backfired them on tremendously, or they just decided that they had to come up with a miracle backstage plan to pull this off, and went beyond anything that we could even comprehend attempting to pull off in any normal situation with a commission and rules and regulations. I just it's just so bizarre and so over the top that they were able to get all these six guys to agree to fight different people, and nobody. It just we can't get first, and then they talk about having a backup plan. That was the other thing. People on Twitter start getting all slobby over these guys. UFC acting like they have a backup plan. They've never had a backup plan, folks. A couple times they've had people weigh in. 99% of the time, there's never a backup plan. If there was a backup plan, what negotiations would you have? Wouldn't you already have a contract in place as a backup plan? Why would you have to supposedly let Ferguson drive one of the UFC guys' Bentleys around Vegas in order for him to accept the fight? Like that, you already have a contract set.
Hunter Campbell's
If you have a
been there.
backup
Yeah,
plan, you already have a contract set up,
the UFC
and
legal
you're
guy.
ready. You're ready to go. Okay, you just got to put your signature on it. We've already agreed that if this fight falls through, we're going to give you an extra $250,000. We're going to give you an extra $3 million, whatever the hell the number is.
They all
But
got, yeah. I mean, no one wants to, like. Someone did ask that at the post
any
fight press conference, and Dana White was just like, they all have deals. They all have deals. Like he does, one of those answers that like, stop asking this question, or you'll never get credentialed again. And the thing about the media with, I mean, as somebody that was credentialed, way back when, and there's people that look at getting credentialed for a UFC event like it's gonna make or break their careers. I mean, not for nothing. If you put that much power in something, then maybe you don't need to be. I mean, covering the sport like that, because there's people that don't get credentialed anymore that do just fine. And I mean, you know who they are. One of them is very obvious to you, that used to get credentialed back in the day and no longer doesn't, and he does just fine. I mean, we're talking about Ariel Helwani. I might as well just say it, because he's the one that had his coach. It's crazy. He's the one that had the coach that they're saying there's no physicians present on his show. And then this morning, it's funny how that came out this morning, and that's how it started, though, don't you think? That the MMA Hour a day or two before has that interview, and then this piece comes out. It's
it's
just weird. It's weird.
it's such a slimy thing, and
It's
Akamoto
like
and
pro
these guys,
wrestling. It's like fucking
you
pro
know,
wrestling.
yeah, it is. And Brett Okamoto jumped on the MMA bandwagon when it really took off, with
Well,
this
because it's ESPN, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't putting out stuff about fighting 10 years ago, 12 years ago. He didn't give a crap. He didn't know. He listen. We listen. The 98% of MMA media is a joke, and that's just the bottom line. It always has been. It's always been kind of the joke. Hell, Dana White's called him a joke, even
Mm-hmm.
while they refused to ask him anything that he'd have to try to give an honest answer to. It's just embarrassing. But I don't believe a word that comes out of any of their mouths, when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just bizarre as hell. Um, but getting to the results of the fight, Diaz picks up a nice win. Had a fun fight with Ferguson. I don't like. I hate how Ferguson showed so much respect, though. I don't like that in the middle of the fight. It was the thing that I had wrong with Anderson
Yeah, I
Silva and
think Daniel Cormier
Adesanya.
kind of voiced that too this week.
Like, Ferguson had that fight. He could have won that fight. He had Diaz on the ropes with
What
leg
you
kicks,
know? What's
like in
fun?
the second
Yeah.
round, early third round.
What's
And
funny is when I was doing I thought he would cut him up. I thought he would take him down and cut him up with his elbows and stuff. But I didn't even. He actually said in his post fight press conference interview, because he spoke to the media afterwards. Um, he said that he made, and we obviously saw the result of it. He was like, you got to remember, he was training for Chimaev. He was expecting a takedown, and then rewatching it. If you do rewatch it, you'll see Diaz. He motions for the guillotine, and Ferguson was actually, he wasn't, he's happy with the corner he has now and the team he has. But I wrote an article about this on the MyMMAnews.com, because he didn't want to do, his corner told him to take down Diaz, and he kept saying, if I take him down, I'm gonna get choked. And that's exactly what happened. And if you watch the choke, I put up his brother. I remember it said 13 years ago when I found the video, and I'm like, holy shit, this video's 13 years old. But his brother has the technique that his brother does a guillotine. It's, if you, any folks that remember the Ultimate Fighter from back in the day, Cody McKenzie had his version called a McKenzie-tine, where he would choke up the choke like so, by putting your hands together like you're praying and wrapping the hand around the neck like that. So it's kind of like that, but it's with a fist. And when you think about the glove, and this is something that Nick Diaz does in the instructional from 13 years ago, he talks about doing that similar, but using the wall or the cage or something to add pressure to cutting off the carotid arteries. And that's lit pretty much, like, if you watch it, there's a picture you could see Nate's hand come through, snake through Ferguson's neck right before he makes the fist, to do pretty much the same technique. And the only difference is that it's not standing, he's on the ground, he's on his back, and instead of using the wall, he's leaning on his left side, because he's using the floor to add to the pressure for that choke, which is why people are talking about why it was such a quick tap. Because I mean, if you've ever been blood choked, folks that have been blood choked know, like, it's either you're going to go to sleep if you don't tap, when on a clean blood choke like that. And And then Diaz said in the post-fight press conference, he was like, "And that's anybody. Anybody takes me down there getting choked," which we've seen. So I honestly I liked how it was a good way to send him off to do whatever he wants to do with Real Fight Inc. or whatever he wants to do. I personally think I hope the timing is better now than when his brother tried to do his own promotional thing. I wrote about that too over at my MMA News if you want to check it out. But you know the fan base for the sport is so much greater now than it was back when his brother tried to do it in 2013 or whenever it was. So I think if he does get licensed and he's able to get a promoter's license and follow through, he's talking about doing boxing, MMA, pro grappling, all under this Real Fight Inc. banner. And me, I know you're on board with it because we like shit like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think he'll have a problem getting a license for that. Considering who we see other promoters that are able to get licenses. Um, yeah, I just, like I said, I didn't like I don't enjoy the theatrics that are like, friendly during the fight. I would have rather seen Ferguson take it a little bit more seriously. Seemed like from the opening bell, like I don't like hugs in the middle of fights. I don't like constant high fives and
Mm.
that kind of stuff.
I didn't
Like,
mind it. I did mind a little bit too. I mean, it was a bit much, but I didn't mind it when you consider what those guys have been through. I mean, it's an unwritten like weird aura of respect that two fighters have when they share cross hands that way. Um,
I
and
understand that, but don't you think at the same time you're kind of accepting a loss? Like you're okay with losing with that attitude?
I mean, there's truth to it, but I mean, it's also there's a fine line between respect and bowing down to the other person's, like you said. I mean, even Ferguson said afterward in the post fight press conference, he was like, I know he's like, my shins are fine, he's probably limping out of here tonight. So he was trying to do damage, but
Oh, there's no
again
doubt.
again
I
the
think
the
he could have
the
won.
the thing about the takedown. I mean, I know he's really happy with his corner, but when I saw him say that after when he addressed it afterward, I was like, you need to talk to your corner, man. Like if as the man in there against the other man, you know for a fact that this guy, if you take him down, it's going to be dangerous for you. And what you were doing is winning. I mean, maybe you should have put your foot down and said, "Fuck that! I'm going to keep doing this instead of what you guys are asking me to do."
Yeah, I mean, it's Tony Ferguson. He's a wild
Yeah.
man in there. I just thought
But
this.
it's a double edged sword too, because then then you're gonna he's uncoachable and he did this whole team and he's still uncoachable. You didn't listen to them, but look what I mean. You never know, but it could have gone 100 other ways, but that it went down how it went down, and I'm glad it was them two, and you know.
No, it worked out. Everything worked out in the long run for everybody except Li Jingliang,
Mhm.
and it didn't work out great for Kevin Holland, although apparently he got paid. I, I'm not big on a fighter like being on Instagram jumping around talking about how much money he got and he just kind of expects to lose. Wasn't real that I that just comes off rubs me wrong way. Like don't
But
don't
you know
like
what? I mean, Chimaev, and again, he's got that wiry body type that's hard to do, but so does Kevin Holland. But I mean, one thing that I was kind of hoping, and Kevin Holland was not doing bad things against the takedown. I mean, rolling out of the doing the what do they call that roll when they get taken down from wrestling. It slips my mind now, but he did it twice. And then when he was fighting the guillotine and he turned over to the other side when he finally got out of it, Chimaev just switched to the other side of his body, and you could only delay it for so long. But I feel like if he had gotten through that round, we would have seen a different fight. I mean, I know the choke was in and he tapped, but I mean, I honestly, if there was any way that he could have made it through that, I think we would have seen a different fight. I
I
don't.
think.
I'm
Oh
not on
yeah.
the Chimaev hype train anymore. Too. Now, if you're gonna miss weight and all these things that allegedly happened or didn't happen, whatever, and still be a fucking dick about it, then not for nothing. I don't want to see you as a champion. We have enough, like you're just being even Khabib Nurmagomedov calling him out on his attitude. I mean, that says a lot about the way he carried himself through that whole thing. So I don't care if he ever gets it. I'm not. He's not a draw for me anymore. I mean, if I like seeing the Mike Tyson esque type of stuff happen. as long as they're a dominant champion. I understand the alpha male and the aggro and all the testosterone and all that shit, but if you're just gonna be a fucking dick about everything, I could give a shit about your career.
Well, that's there's a lot of truth to that. I think that he's obviously trying to play the villain role. I think that listen, I'm still fascinated by his ability to do what he
Yeah,
does. I mean, he is while I agree with everything you just said, we might be looking at one of the greatest talents to ever compete in the sport. But with that said, we have one of the greatest talents in this compete in the sport that I'm going to root against to get. I'm going to root to get his ass kicked
hmm.
in every fight that he has in the near future until I see like until I don't like again like it's unprofessional. Make weight, talk all the shit you want, go in there and
Yeah.
do your
If you want
stuff.
to, if you want to be a champion, you want to have everything that's upstanding and representative of that. I mean, look at we just talked about 274th Oliveira. Look at the heat he caught because of the weight issue and the fuck up in between who was rules regs that are using whatever state that was. That's a whole other rabbit hole. You can go back and listen to that when McGracken and I talked about it when he came on the podcast. But I mean, if you're just gonna act like I don't care, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get by. I don't care. I'll kill all these guys. I'll kill all these. It's like no. And the other thing too is it seems like he was more worried, maybe worry about making your weight and stuff like that. Like that. If you actually tried, maybe worry about making weight and all that stuff instead of trying to start fights with Paulo Costa and Jake Shields and everyone else, but your guy and Kevin Holland. And he seemed to start a lot of shit with everyone but his actual opponent. And it's just like, maybe if, Kevin Holland was the one that called him out on it most of the time too. He said he was like he keeps every time the cameras are around, he seems to start popping, getting he probably likes it. They say fame is a drug, and I mean, and for MMA fans, he's famous. So maybe he's he's got that high.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I listen. It's not gonna. It won't play forever. And eventually his will get pulled and somebody will turn his lights off. Like you said, who knows? But somebody's got to survive a couple rounds to
Hmm.
wear him out. I mean, we saw it with Burns. We saw it get close. Um,
Yeah, and also
Paulo Costa is an interesting match. You get a big bulky dude in there who's got some takedown defense and has the power to put your lights out. That we'll see if I'm the UFC. I probably am looking to make that fight, and I'm probably looking to make that fight like ASAP because
yeah,
we either need we if you're the UFC, you almost got to do something to save his reputation. He's either got to go in there and beat the hell out of Paulo Costa, or he's got to get knocked out and be humbled and regroup and become the potential future champion. That I think he's probably at 170. I think
for
he if he
sure,
if he can
for
make it, I
sure.
think that's what he is. So I
No,
don't
he's
know. I
he's a
mean,
great talent. I just don't like the fucking attitude.
no, I don't like the attitude. I don't like I'm gonna kill everybody. I think it just gets over the top. And it's just overkill. It's not real. It looks like it's produced. It looks like
Yep,
it's because
yep,
we've seen him not be this way. And all of a sudden, it was the same thing with McGregor. You saw McGregor in the early days, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, like it's like a switch changed, and all of a sudden,
yeah.
we
The
got
fame,
Mystic
man. Fame
Mac
is a
and
hell of a drug.
yeah,
Yeah.
and drugs are a hell of a drug too. So
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but um, I'm gonna watch Chimaev fight. I'm interested to see because we've
But yeah,
never
now
seen anybody
like you
have so many
said,
fights and not get hit. But it's gonna
yeah.
be to root against him. It's not
Hmm.
gonna be. And I can't think of anybody on the roster that I would root for him to beat at this point. I want to see him put down. I want to see him bloody, and I want to see him have to be humbled and realize that you know
And I mean, he seems adamant about doing the two weight class thing, but I mean, we all know that Dana White's his boss, and Dana White was pretty adamant at the post fight press conference that he was like, no, we're gonna see him, but we're gonna see him at 80. And he kept saying 180, but then he corrected himself and said 185. So I think that's where we'll see him. I mean, we know he can put in the same amount of work and produce the same result at that weight, and close enough with Kevin Holland. I forget who's the guy that he beat out the week's notice when we first discovered him in the UFC anyway for the new fans that jumped on his hype train back when Abu Dhabi when he did it. Um, who did he beat? I forget who he beat. That
he
was
beat
ranked.
Mershart.
Yeah, and he was ranked. So it's like okay, we know you can do it at that weight, so just do it there. That way you don't have to deal with this shit. You can talk all your crap and be the gangster that you want. But
Yeah, I mean, Mershart was probably the one that really ever jumped out, and then he beat uh, Li Jingliang. So I mean, those were kind of the fights that really produced, made him a household name. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. Um, Diaz, I'm interested to see where he goes. I think that we are going to see him obviously in a boxing ring based off of his things. I'm not sure if we're looking at a Jake Paul fight. When he mentioned Conor McGregor,
mhm.
he's big. He's a little bit big maybe for Mayweather, but McGregor fought Mayweather. I mean, I know it's exhibition fights, but that would be something that people would probably tune in to watch if you're going to pull off some kind of silly boxing match. Diaz versus McGregor, the trash talk would be fun. The
Mhm.
I mean, you kind it'd be, but it'd be more of a kind of a fun atmosphere instead of this
Yeah,
like
what's funny is
almost.
when they asked him if they would if he do the, of course he wants to do the trilogy with McGregor, just outside of the financial thing. But when they asked him, would you do it with him in boxing, and he's like, then that he's like, that's not a trilogy, that's the first one. He's
Yeah,
like, if you want to see a trilogy, it's got to be MMA. If it's boxing, that's going to be the first one. And
yeah,
he's got a point there. I mean, when it comes to that, because I'm when you talk about these mixed rules and people coming over to do fights and different rule sets from other sports, the we've said this a billion times on this podcast. The senior person in that sport is going to be the one that wins because they're used to that rule set, which is why McGregor lost. Everybody loses these boxing matches and blah blah blah. But yeah, man. I mean, whatever he does, I just hope Real Fight Inc. is successful. I get their press releases. I was surprised to get it. Shout out to Sean Graven who sent it to me, the PR agency guy that sent it to me, with the logo and everything. So I'm hoping that I asked him about broadcasting rights yet, and since obviously he's got to get the license and everything, it's in its infancy, so there's no broadcasting, nothing else. It was just kind of to make people aware. I don't know if they meant to do it so soon, but Diaz had put out the tweet. They've already made social media handles for Real Fight Inc. So I'm whatever they do, I think it's the timing is right and it should be fun.
yeah. And speaking of Jake Paul, one of the other things that we got announced recently, when Jake Paul first started this run, we obviously didn't really mention his name. We didn't know the difference between him and his brother. We didn't really want to get too deep into it. But now he's fighting Anderson Silva after fighting Woodley twice and Ben Askren.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Anderson Silva, obviously somebody that we all love, and that we want to see be successful for as
Yeah,
long as he's walking this planet, competing in anything.
and
Um,
not for nothing. I mean, first of all, Jake Paul was supposed to headline the Garden against an actual boxer. People wanted him to fight an actual boxer, and then when he tried to fight an actual boxer, the actual boxers all fucking flaked out on him. So this is one of the fights that actually Dana White said they'll fight Anderson Silva. Well, here he is now. He's fighting Anderson Silva. So not for nothing. Shout out to Jake Paul for fucking
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to say.
yeah,
Like it was a joke. We made fun of him
yeah,
for a couple of years, really, and now it's put up or shut up, and he's going in there.
yep.
Um, I,
Respect.
I, I a part of me kind of thinks that Anderson's getting a little bit more push in the boxing, because of the Tito thing. Like I see after seeing Tito Ortiz box, like it's hard for me to like give any credence to really what we saw there, other than Anderson showed some pop when he put him out cold. The Chavez Jr. fight was obviously probably his biggest accomplishment in the boxing
Yeah,
ring.
which is
Um,
another reason. That's another like red ink circle around Anderson Silva's name that people are probably in Jake Paul's camp are like, you sure you want to do this? And Jake Paul's saying yes. So
I wonder though how much Caesar Chavez Jr. was kind of taken off guard by that, because I don't know if you expected, if you're a professional boxer who's kind of reached the pinnacle in a sense. I know he had some ups and downs and stuff, but I wonder if you're expecting that from Anderson. I wonder if you're expecting, I don't know if he just kind of thought that it was going to be kind of a gimme match. So who knows? I do think that Jake Paul is going to come in shape for this fight. I think he's got some power, as seen by some of his knockouts, and he's going to have 20 years on Anderson Silva. So I do think that there is some
yeah,
competition in this fight. However, I do think Anderson Silva will be too quick, too smart.
I feel like
Move.
he probably has a reach advantage again. And again, his experience might especially. I mean, when you think about it, they probably have they're probably when you look at their boxing records, outside of their age and all that. That I mean, there's a lot of equals, to kind of balance out the things that the youth and the experience. It's this is actually an interesting competitive matchup that I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I think so, and obviously, Anderson Silva's making a huge payday. Anything when you're tagging with Jake Paul is gonna get you paid. Um, that's kind of, it sounds sad, but I almost part of me kind of wants Jake Paul to win just so Nate Diaz can get that gigantic paycheck. Because if he beats Anderson Silva, then Nate Diaz, the fight becomes mega. If that's the fight they want to make, and you start talking, you know, 10, 20 $1 million in a purse, if not more. That's got to be that's it just as somebody who would like to see the Diaz's get their due after all the BS that they've had to
Hmm.
put with through all those commissions and stuff. So that'll be interesting. But that's happening October 29th
29th. Yep.
in Phoenix, Arizona. And really the only other thing this week is there is a UFC fight night, typical fight night card. Main event's nice bantamweight bout. Corey Sandhagen versus Song Yadong, two of the higher ranked bantamweights in the world squaring off. Uh, I think this is a like a 4 or 7 p.m. Eastern time main card start, so a little
Hmm.
bit earlier. I believe it's all ESPN Plus, so not necessarily in your wheelhouse. But I know that's a fight that you're certainly as a fight fan and interested in seeing.
Yeah.
Um, I think Sandhagen. I'm picking Sandhagen to win. I think he'll use his reach. I think he'll
Yeah.
use his length and stuff to be able to get to the smaller, more compact Yadong and and pick up a win. I think he's going to win by decision. Um, I think that you're looking at two. Song Yadong is very young. I think he's only like 24 years old.
Yeah.
So I think
Scrappy too. So
scrappy. So I think
yeah.
a setback here doesn't necessarily derail his career. I just think Sandhagen has had the tougher competition, had some real razor thin losses to some of the best and some of the greats of the sport really that are starting to develop in front of us. So I think he kind of shows that he's maybe a step above at this point in their career and picks up a win. Um,
Hmm.
and that's this Saturday prior to the Canelo Triple G trilogy fight, boxing.
It's on
One
the
of the
zone.
it's
Yeah.
on.
It's
It's
a
on.
it's a the zone pay per view.
It's on.
Remember they were supposed to kill pay per view, but now this is a the zone pay per view.
No,
So
that
whatever.
fight, hey, but
We've
it's the
seen it
box.
twice.
We've seen it twice, but both of
Yeah.
them were really good. And this,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna sit down and watch a world championship boxing match, this is the fight that I want to see. I rooted for Triple G. I don't think he pulls this one off. Unfortunately, I think he's a little too aged now. I think Canelo's going to be hungry coming off of his
Yeah.
loss in his last bout. So, and when you fight Canelo, you're fighting the promoters and you're fighting the judges. So, as seen in the first two bouts.
Hmm.
So it's never you really got to get in there and whoop his ass, if not put him out completely to be able to win a fight against him. Um, but yeah, that's this weekend. So I think that's why the UFC is going early, so they're clearing out of the way because you know as much as they want to say it, they don't like to go up against uh,
Not
a
too
big
much.
a
Not
big
too many
time
times.
boxing match.
Yeah.
No, not a Canelo fight, not a Mayweather, not that kind of stuff. So yeah, so got some action this weekend. Um, and hopefully everybody just makes weight, shows up professionally.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. I
and we
mean,
don't have to deal with this
mm,
and I wouldn't nobody should hold their breath waiting to hear from the commission about any
oh,
kind of
that's
punishment
yeah.
being dealt out in their quote unquote
Yeah, I
investigation.
mean, think about it. When they asked Dana White about that, in the he did a short scrum after the alleged stuff happened, and they're like, are you gonna punish anyone?" And he was like, "No, no. These are fighters and their personalities. It's comes with the territory. So if the UFC is not going to do anything about it, I don't think the commissions are going to do anything with it. I feel like that was more of just them just saying it because don't forget, people, the commissions get a chunk of the pie that comes in from the money of these events too. So no one's canceling anything if it's going to have them lose something that was already bringing in a lot of money. So
No, or they'll just randomly say that they're fining all the fighters $25,000 so that they can
yeah,
get a nice chunk of cash coming in,
Yeah.
just to act like, okay, yeah, we did our investigation. Maybe $10,000, and then they take 40% of it, and or whatever, however the heck it works. But
Whatever.
yeah. Anyways, fans can follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Edit Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. And weekly, you can always check us out at allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, MMA news, and stories. Like I said, let's just have everybody show up, wait. Let's get a good professional championship
Yeah.
boxing match. Let's get a nice bantamweight contender fight, and get the world back to where it should be
Yeah.
for this beautiful sport that we that we talk about weekly.
All right. Peace.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Good night.